Good to go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting for April 7th, 2026. I'll look for a mover and a seconder to open the agenda. Moved by Eric, seconded by Cam. That this meeting be open at 5:02 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the agenda. Moved by Cam, seconded by Eric. That the agenda was presented to the Planning Advisory Committee dated April 7th, 2026 be adopted as prepared. All in favor? That's carried. And adoption of the previous minutes. I'll look for mover and seconder. By Eric.
My last name is spelled wrong on the minutes from the previous meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Couple mistakes.
Okay. Any other changes to that? So Cam, you'll second it, but we'll do it with the amendments.
Yep.
Okay. Moved by Eric, seconded by Cam, the minutes of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting of March 10th, 2026 be adopted as amended. All in favor? Okay. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move into the applications. We have application reference B4 2026 Robinson. You'd have to speak to it.
Yeah, sure. So this is a consent application which proposes the creation of one new lot on an existing lot of record, which is currently accessed off a development road. So the proposal is to create that one new lot, which would achieve the minimum required 2.5 acres or 1 hectare of land, which would be referred to as vacant residential land. And the proposed retained lands would therefore comprise 5.4 acres or 2.19 hectares, which includes an existing shop, bunkie, cabin, a shed, an on-site sewage system, a well, and an entrance driveway. And the majority of the retained lands comprise managed grass and kind of treed areas, whereas the proposed severed lot largely comprises undisturbed trees and vegetation, which is kind of further up the slope, if you like, towards the escarpment towards North Star Drive there. So, subject to approval, this would result in the proposed severed lot having a frontage of approximately 190 meters on North Star Drive to the north, which would include both the alignment with the road and at the end of it, there's a cul-de-sac, so just kind of a rough calculation for that. And as we'll go into the cul-de-sac is approximately where the new driveway would come off to access the property as well. It would have a depth, therefore, of approximately 65 meters, and I mentioned it would be about 1 hectare in size. The retained lot, on the other hand, would retains existing frontage in full of 94.5 meters, approximately off Development Road, and have a depth of approximately 205 meters. So the applicant has stated their intent to construct a new single-family dwelling on the proposed new lot to be created. And as per Bonfield's policies, housekeeping bylaw amendment that was put into effect last year, if it can meet kind of servicing requirements, capacity-wise, there's potential there for an attached additional dwelling unit and or a detached additional dwelling unit as well to on that lot of record. So a review of the planning policies, so this is pretty consistent now, but we have the provincial planning statement, and as we know, it's that and a series of legislative changes that have been put into effect in recent years, very pro-housing. This proposal seeks to create a new dwelling, so it's consistent with that objective. It falls within the rural area, so policy 2.5 of the PPS talks about the need for balance, really, in terms of the rural character, appropriate range and mix of housing, utilizing rural infrastructure, and the need to conserve biodiversity and consider the ecological benefits provided by nature. So in that context, we do get mixed messages sometimes from the province around these objectives and that, but we know that these best management practices, where possible, is a good way to go. I mean, not just to kind of maintain opportunities for biodiversity, but reduce the disruption to the local area. So we'd certainly be encouraging as part of the site development process that any trees to be cleared would be, reduced to the maximum amount reasonably necessary to both maintain the character of this location, but also given the proposed severed lot on the slope there, that retaining some of these trees, which is actually kind of a nice feature in that location, would also contribute to the stability of the slope. And I think there's probably more interest in really that maintaining, preserving, preventing erosion from taking place into the future. And we'll come back to that in a while. So as we've seen, there's policies that apply to sewage, water and stormwater. It's always a good best practice to try and incorporate low impact development solutions where possible to increase the amount of infiltration that takes place and reduce the amount of flooding both on the property or off it. Natural assets, it's important to just note really it's located within a sand and gravel resource area. In terms of water, the Conservation Authority did note that it's an area that's potentially vulnerable as an aquifer, but like that's being said for large areas across the township as a whole, so it's not especially something new. And given the lot size as proposed, it's not anticipated to have any impact. And the Conservation Authority themselves did not object to the proposal. Agriculture-wise, a review of the kind of local context did not reveal any barns within approximately 500-meter radius off the property. And so the need for any form of minimum distance separation calculations was not required. Then we move into the Township of Bonfield's official plan. So we've got everything from division through to development policies, again, back to the minimum distance separation, natural heritage features, and the proposal as a whole is consistent with these policy objectives and didn't really create any red flags in terms of doing the review. So in terms of transportation, it's served off an existing township road. In fact, both lots would be, both the retained would continue to be off Development Road, and the new severed lot would be off North Star Drive to the north of the property. And in terms of the creation of new lots, the consent policies indicate that up to 3 severed parcels and 1 retained parcel can be achieved, if you like, within a concession. And the only other severance that's taken place in the property since 1990 was application reference B299, which resulted in severance of a larger irregular shaped parcel to the west. So subject to approval, the applicant would still have at least 1 more severance remaining within the current development period. And as noted, we're already going through an official plan review anyway, so that term will soon come to an end. So yeah, altogether, in terms of like just reviewing in terms of the feedback, the Algonquins of Ontario did not raise any concerns in principle about the creation of the new lot as described. However, they did note that the subject lands are located within Algonquin traditional territory. We're seeing a bit more engagement on behalf of the Algonquins of Ontario in various planning matters. So I think we're going to try to schedule a meeting with them anyway to kind of understand the latest from their perspective. But to emphasize, they did not raise objections to this proposal as it is. And also the North Bay Matter Conservation Authority didn't raise any either. So they say no section 28 permit will be required. The property was evaluated as it is on all properties of this kind of size on the basis of assuming a 3-bedroom dwelling with less than 20 fixture units and less than 200 meters squared, with a 4-foot filter bed and 21.3 meters squares tank. So that's just like an average. It's a litmus test. Could it accommodate that? Obviously, when any person goes to actually obtain an on-site sewage system permit, then they would evaluate that based on what's actually being proposed at the time. But it just helps them to give us their opinion, really, as part of any application. The MTO says it's not in permit control area, so it's not of interest to them. Trans-Canada Bike Line's not in proximity to this. The Bonfield Snowmobile Club didn't raise any issues, concerns. The trail does run along Development Road, but it's the other side of Development Road and wouldn't be affected by this proposal. The township's public works manager didn't provide any specific comments, but it's noted that a new entrance driveway will be required to accommodate the development, which will be applied by standard condition. So the analysis pretty much says what I just told you there. Unless there's any questions, there are some conditions. I'll hand it back to Jeff.
Any questions from the committee?
Nope.
The only question I have is the mature tree line buffer of at least 30 meters. The applicant is aware of that condition.
Not directly in the way it's been worded. I don't think that there's any objection to it, and he's happy he wants to maintain the natural enclosure of that property. I don't think it'll be a barrier, and given where the dwelling's proposed off to the far west of the development, then the area we're talking about is kind of as it runs flush with the road. So as it gets to where the cul-de-sac is, it kind of plateaus out there. So I can't see there being any issues.
Okay. And how long is that maintained? So we're gonna sever this in a 30-meter buffer. Is that for the life? Because trees come and go, so.
Yeah, so it would be was supplied by condition, therefore it's registered effectively in that sense, again, the title against that property,
Right.
the buffer would be maintained.
And what happens if by natural causes the tree line is no longer there? Are they required to replace it?
That's a very good question. Wasn't anticipating that one either.
Right.
I guess that might be one for the insurance companies and want a bridge to cross if it came to it. I can't see the whole lot being destroyed, but we have seen evidence of microbursts in the township, so I suppose that's possible. That could be applied anywhere. Yes.
There wouldn't be any development there in that buffer zone. Is that what it's saying?
No, I mean, they'd have to get another severance because they've already would have built a dwelling anyway, and it would be on a slope, so it would be against any builder's logic to build on it. So
Yeah.
I would have thought.
No, I think it makes sense. My only concern is, are we locking in, if I'm thinking future,
Yeah.
have we just locked in natural disaster happens, a fire goes through that we have, like, I understand if it's a tree line buffer of at least 30 meters to try and respect neighbors, like, I think it's good planning. I'm just wondering if how that looks longevity wise for
Yeah.
anything that happens.
Yeah, that is a standard condition that's often
Mhm.
applied in other, say, municipalities and in certain contexts. I think it's justified in this case in order to maintain that slope stability.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
sure.
just blanket apply that everywhere, and but I do take your point.
Yeah, I just wonder if, and maybe it's between now and it going to council, and or if there's language that could be added that just adds some sort of a parameter there that will save a homeowner or the property owner from having to do
Yeah,
things above and beyond if it's not what they're doing. I understand we don't want them clear cutting
yeah,
30 meters of trees, but
yeah.
Okay.
And there's plenty more trees beyond that 30 meters that could and therefore be cut down, even though we'd encourage them not to. But
sure, yeah,
there's certainly areas to develop, a lot of areas to develop.
Yeah.
in that process.
Some people want to see the lakes.
right,
It happens.
Well, the way that this particular property, it's a good job you mentioned that. So where North Star Drive is, it then kind of goes slightly up and then over. So it's only the properties on the north side of North Star Drive that can actually see the lake. So given the topography, it's on the slope side, south side of that. So there's no lake views from that.
if there's no other questions, I'll read the motion. I'll take a mover and seconder. Moved by Eric, second by Cam. We're good? Yeah. That the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that consent application B4 2026 Robinson proposed severance to create one new lot on lands legally described as concession 7 BF Part Lot 5 REM parcel 11779 NIP known as 51 Development Road be approved subject to the following conditions. 1, that the approval applies to the land legally described as Con 7 BF Part Lot 5 REM parcel 11779 NIP 51 Development Road. 2, the following documents be provided. A, the original executed transfer or deed, a duplicate original and one photocopy for our records. B, a copy of the survey plan deposited in the land titles office if required. C, an electronic copy of the survey emailed to planning@bonfieldtownship.com. D, a schedule describing the severed lands attached to the transfer for approval purposes. E, a schedule that provides a registrable legal description attached to the transfer for the retained lands for approval purposes if required. 3, that if there is a forced road situation, a 20-meter road allowance or whichever amount is required for road purposes shall be transferred to the municipality at the owner's expense across the whole lot or parcel for which the severance was taken, and compensation shall be awarded as per the compensation grid for the transfer of forced roads. 4, that the building setbacks for all buildings must meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw for the retained and or severed lots, whichever are affected at the time of the survey. 5, a fee in lieu of parkland dedication shall be deposited in the office of the clerk prior to the stamping of any transfer document associated with the proposed lot to be severed. Reference is made to bylaw 2024-26, Schedule A, which contains a tariff of fees should be referenced when determining the amount payable. 6, any and all tax arrears must be paid prior to the stamping of the transfer documents for a new lot. 7, that the survey will apply to both the retained and proposed severed lands. 8, that all conditions must be satisfied and the transfer documents must be signed and completed within a period of 2 years from the date of approval of consent. 9, that the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority be consulted and approval obtained for the implementation of an on-site sewage systems on both the severed and retained lots. 10, that an application for a driveway entrance permit be made to the township's public works manager with the access designed to a standard and specification that is sufficient to the severance, sufficient to the service to service the proposed new dwellings. 11, that a mature tree-lined buffer of at least 30 meters be identified and maintained along the northern perimeter of the property fronting North Star Drive. And 12, that if any artifacts of indigenous interest or human remains are encountered during site preparation, construction, or related activities that work in the affected area cease immediately, and that the AOO consultation office be contacted without delay. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to application reference B6 2026 Woods. Again, I'll ask the planning administrator to walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So this application applies to land legally described as Bonfield Concession 6 E Part Lot 5 RP reference plan 36R 11219 Part Part 1 Parcel 5201 NIP. And so what this proposes to do is create 2 new lots of record. The properties proposed to be severed include a approximate 3.7 acre or 1.5 hectare lot and a 5 acre or 2 hectare lot, and the proposed retained lands, which will comprise approximately 20 to 25 acres of or 8 to 10 hectares of vacant land. The whole property is currently assessed as being vacant residential lands and comprises a mix of open grassy and treed areas. The location in which the 2 new lots are proposed includes a mix of unmanaged vegetation, and the landscape features are discussed kind of later in this report. So subject property is designated within the official plan as falling within the rural area. It's also zoned rural for planning purposes. The subject property is located at the intersection of Development Road and South Shore Road, if anyone's familiar. And it's surrounded by a mix of properties, north, south, east, west, which are predominantly residential. This is a residentially dominated area of the township. So in terms of the proposal, the proposed severed lot would create frontage of approximately, lot 1 would create frontage of approximately 90 meters off South Shore Road and depth of approximately 155 meters. The proposed severed lot 2 again would have frontage of 90 meters and a depth of approximately 155 meters. The only reason to be slightly different in size would be due to the kind of irregular configuration of the existing lot. So that's why The two, one is 1.5 hectares and one is 2 hectares. The exact size of the retained lot, it's put there between 20 to 25 acres. Because during the application process, the applicant did come to me and said there was maybe a slight discrepancy between what our systems were saying, the mapping, and what her survey was saying. So I said, well, we'll keep it as a range, and you know, unless there's any major objections, and as you'll see, there isn't, then that will all come through basically in the surveys, which were required by condition anyway. So we'll be able to kind of rectify exactly what those land holdings are through that process. So the proposed new 7 lots are intended for private sale. Although the housing mix itself has not been confirmed, any proposal to introduce new housing options on either the 7 or retained lots will need to comply with provisions set out in the comprehensive zoning bylaw. But that said, per the last example, the Conservation Authority have done their assessment, which is based upon the standard single-family dwelling on each of those lots, and determined that there's sufficient space to accommodate both septic system in association with that dwelling, but also a replacement septic system in the future. So that's kind of the test that they look for there. So the manager of public works would also be required to issue driveway entrance permits off South Shore Drive and or Development Road if the retained lot is to be developed as well. In terms of policies, again, the provincial planning statement, well documented, that it supports residential development, and this would create 2 new lots. It's a relatively sustainable location, I would say. There's existing housing. It's in fairly close proximity to the hamlet of Bonfield, where you can access different services, hopefully more in the future, but there's the basis of services to access right now. The proposed new 7 lots will be located in a largely unmanaged vegetated area, which comprises a mix of trees and shrubs to the south of the existing lot. So it's kind of close to where the road starts to turn around as you start to exit the township, really. So no particular concerns around sewage capacity. Again, there was this kind of discussion around best management practices, and even though I'd say the quality of the trees and shrubs in this location are not as nice to look at or as they are in the last application that we've just reviewed there, where the driveway entrances would come in off South Shore Road, again, there is a slope there that drops down into the property. So that's why we felt to apply again this 30-meter kind of buffer rule along there. Obviously, you'd be allowed to bring a driveway in, but that by maintaining trees along that kind of there would not only add privacy to the dwelling that you construct, but it would maintain the integrity of that slope off South Shore Road and prevent erosion and anything of that. In terms of agriculture, again, that review was done and it was determined that there aren't any barns within a 500-meter radius. So a review of the minimum distance separation requirements was not required. In terms of natural features and cultural heritage, it's not identified as being subject to any particular biological or geological diversity within the property. So there's plenty of land within these proposed 7 lots to make the clearance required to build a dwelling and or attached and or detached dwelling if the property owners decided to do that in the future and subject to the Conservation Authority approval. There's no identifiable water bodies or wetlands on the property. The properties will be accessed over township roads. That satisfies the consent policy. In terms of the number of consents that have taken place on this property, it does have a fairly complex kind of history in this one. I won't go into full details, but essentially prior to 1990 and the current official plan coming into effect, a series of consent applications were approved by the township, but they relate mainly to existing properties that kind of front onto, I've forgotten the name of the road. You get to Development Road and turns around Lakeshore Road. So that's where I think it's Lakeshore Road.
Right at the end.
Yeah, and then it takes a left. And so they were created over time, and it was prior to this period in which we look at the 3+1 kind of rule. So we can forget about that, even though that did create development. On September the 12th, 2001, another application was submitted by the former property owner, not the current ones. This resulted in the creation of a new large lot, which largely comprises approximately 35 acres of land. So that's referred to as 10 Development Road. And when you look at the map, you'd see it as to the immediate west of the retained lands that we're currently evaluating. The owners of this property also own 4 Lakeshore Road, and 10 Development Road abuts that. So they've said they like having that natural space, even though it's a lot of record in itself. They appreciate that in association with their current property, and they don't have any intention to develop that now or in the immediate future. Which alleviates perhaps any concerns about wanting to bring forward more development at this time. But as I say, we will have a new official plan in effect at some stage, and so that if the ministry agrees to our proposals, we kind of reset that clock anyway. So cross that bridge when you come to it, I guess, is the answer there. And then in terms of more recent applications, in 2020, the current property owners applied for a consent to sever part of the retained lands, which is subject to the current application. That application, reference B8 2020, was approved on February 3rd, 2021. It resulted in the creation of 1 new lot in the south of the property. So that's one off the 3+1 now. Look at that page though. Okay, so carrying on. So as required under the Planning Act, circulation to the appropriate agencies and bodies and neighbouring landowners for comment was completed on the 13th of March. There was no comments received from members of the public. The Algonquins of Ontario, again, did not raise any concerns in principle or propose the creation of the new lots described. They requested again the kind of standard condition that if any human remains or artifacts are found, that the office be contacted. The Conservation Authority again said there's sufficient space within which to accommodate that system. Hydro One didn't reply, but its standard response for lots like this is just to consult the local area distribution supplier. So they come in later in the planning process, you could say. And then the Ministry of Transportation, no comments, it's not near the highway. Same with the Trans-Canada Pipeline, it's not near that. Snowmobile Club indicated that the snowmobile trail does run along South Shore Road, but didn't raise any particular concerns. It might be a factor of consideration when you do these driveway entrance permits, just to make sure there's sufficient kind of like ridge along the edge of the road there to both accommodate the entrance and allow for that to take place, but it's not something that's a showstopper here. Public Works and Fire Department didn't have any specific comments. So in terms of the analysis, like I did go a bit into the planning history there. Given that this would result in the applicant kind of maximizing the number of severances, they've been informed that no more would be permitted within this current plan period. And they've been aware that any future proposals to introduce new additional residential lots beyond those currently proposed are likely to require a country lot or plan of subdivision to prevent ribbon development. This is kind of a key planning issues that if you indefinitely allow just development to go along highways without making more efficient use of land and resources, then it can build up problems in the longer term. So they're on board for at least discussing that if there were any future proposals. The Conservation Authority identified it is in this highly vulnerable aquifer, but there's broader conversations taking place with Conservation Authority and others in the context of the whole watershed right now. So these are matters that we can look to address at a more strategic level. And that would be it. So there is a recommendation to approve this one as well. And with that, I'll pass it back to the chair.
Questions or comments?
I just have a question, just for the record, can you clarify the provision that the property should only be severed up to 3 times? plus the retained portion, what happens, when the new official plan gets adopted? What does that mean for this severance, for example?
Yeah, so obviously it'll all be subject to whether the ministry approves of the proposal that was put forward in the draft, and that we're still hanging on to here, that kind of resets, and that where, so long as we can achieve the minimum lot size of 1 hectare and at least 60 meters of frontage onto a municipal maintained road, that there would potentially, not in the severed lots because they're undersized, but one is 2 hectares. So there would be potential to further sever that in the future. I don't. But there's other land to play with, but
I think what I'm trying to clarify is that that 3 times is no longer in play anymore, right? So now the official plan resets it, and then going forward, as long as that a lot size is large enough, then you can sever it another 3 times.
potentially, if and in the context of broader policy framework that we're going to be creating within the official plan. So there'll be certain areas, and I think we kind of had a broad discussion around this back in January, I believe it was. But once the township kind of identifies its hierarchy of where development should go, so usually a best practice is kind of to look at rural urban extensions in this case, such as the hamlets. And then you might look at other more kind of sustainable locations, accessible locations throughout the township. And then obviously on a site specific basis, you've got like development constraint areas and all the other stuff that we look at. So it wouldn't be like to say, yeah, everywhere that is possible, you would get 3+1. You'd have to evaluate all those policies too.
No, but this is no longer a restriction. Like if everything else falls into place, maybe I shouldn't be using this example, maybe, you know, a different lot within a hamlet, but I'm saying that once the new official plan, then you're not looking back 25 years and saying this has been already exceeded its limitation. So now it's basically a fresh start as long as the new lots meet all the requirements.
And the current policies, whichever they end up being fine to be, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll look for a mover and a seconder, and then I'll get to reading. Moved by Ken, seconded by Eric. That the planning advisory committee recommends to council that consent application P6 2026 Woods proposed severance to create 2 new lots on lands legally described as Bonfield Concession 6 E Part Lot 5 RP 36R11219 Part 1 Parcel 5205 NIP be approved subject to the following conditions. 1. That this approval applies to the land legally described as Bonfield Con 6 EPT Lot 5 RP 36 R11219 PT Part 1 Parcel 5205 NIP. 2. That the following documents be provided. A. The original executed deed or transfer, a duplicate original, and 1 photocopy for our records. B. A copy of the survey plan deposited at the land titles office if required. C. An electronic copy of the survey emailed to planning@bonfieldtownship.com. D. A schedule describing the severed lands attached to the transfer for approval purposes. E. A schedule that provides a registrable legal description attached to the transfer of the retained, for the retained land for approval purposes if required. 3. That if there is forced road situation, a 20-meter road allowance or whichever amount is acquired for road purposes shall be transferred to the municipality at the owner's expense across the whole lot or parcel for which the severance was taken, and compensation shall be awarded as per the compensation grid for the transfer of forced roads. 4. That the building setbacks for all buildings must meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw for the retained and or severed lots, whichever are effective at the time of survey. 5. A fee in lieu of parkland dedication shall be deposited in the office of the clerk prior to the stamping of any transfer document associated with the proposed new lots to be severed. Reference is made to bylaw 2024-26, Schedule A, which contains a tariff of fees and should be referenced when determining the amount payable. 6. Any or all tax arrears must be paid prior to the stamping of the transfer documents for a new lot. 7. That the survey will apply to both the retained and proposed severed lands. 8, that all conditions must be satisfied and that the transfer documents must be signed and completed within a period of 2 years from the date of approval of consent. 9, that the North Manado Conservation Authority be consulted and approval obtained for implementation of on-site sewage systems on both the severed and retained lots. 10, that the applications for driveway entrance permits be made to the township's public works manager with the entrances designed to be to a standard and specification that is sufficient to service the proposed new dwellings. 11, that a mature tree-lined buffer of at least 30 meters be identified and maintained along the northern perimeter of the property fronting North Star Drive. Is that correct, North Star Drive? Yeah. It's,
got a bit mixed up that.
yeah,
South Shore.
Tough Shore Road, we'll replace it with that, yeah.
Maintained along the northern perimeter of the property,
It would
West.
be east and.
West the road. Oh, east, sorry. Yeah.
I was getting to west.
The other west.
along the eastern perimeter of the property fronting South Shore Road, that if any artifacts of indigenous interest or human remains are encountered during site preparation, construction, or related activities, that work in the affected areas cease immediately, and that the AOO consultation office be contacted without delay. So I need to say, as amended,
Yeah, it says minutes.
and just to note that I also changed, it was Robinson, I changed the words.
Okay,
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? That is carried.
my only other question, Chair, would be that in terms of the public meeting side of stuff,
Yeah.
you read the script, so there's nobody here today, I don't know if you need to do that, or just acknowledge that this was a public meeting, or
That's one.
do you have it at the back of your package, perhaps? Well,
Oh,
I don't know if you need to, I was just asking the question.
do we need to read this document? This is a public meeting. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak, we ask them to do it now. If there's none, so we'll move on.
Okay.
Public consultation quote. Let's see here. Moving on to the planning report, the committee of adjustments. Over to you again, Simon.
Yes, so essentially, where we are right now, just some context, this kind of report, is we've had a planning advisory committee for many years, I understand it, but certainly for this period of council, and we did receive a notice of resignation from one of the members, and that was, I believe, in January, and in the context of all of the projects that we have ongoing, particularly the official plan review of the content zoning bylaw review, which perhaps our colleagues here can attest to, is a lot of reading, a lot of understanding, a lot of history really involved in all of that, kind of getting to the plan to the point where it was submitted to the ministry. And then as we did kind of in January, evaluating all of that feedback and really kind of feeding into that process. So we know that to bring an additional member onto the planning advisory committee at this stage would take an enormous amount of effort from all of us to kind of bring them up to speed, and still might have questions which inevitably could delay some of the progress that we're making right now with the plan. So that's one challenge, is that we're one person down on the committee. Our mayor herself did indicate that, you know, if she couldn't make it, or if two couldn't, then we could be in a situation where we wouldn't have quorum for the meeting, so we wouldn't even be able to kind of process regular consent applications. So unless we continue to remain focused on the tasks that we have at hand, then this could grind to a halt as a committee, and it's a risk that we face. It's also taken into account the provincial government's kind of focus on reducing red tape at the municipal level. It's important to acknowledge that and understand that the more we can streamline the committees or the number of committees, so you're not kind of making repeat decisions on applications, are just like kind of, and in this case, if we were to look at disbanding this planning advisory committee as it is and transfer our existing powers to the committee of adjustment, then with that, we've proposed the creation of some new bylaws to enact that planning committee of adjustment. And in that context, the two members, public members, plus Councillor Corbett and Mayor Paquette, the four of you would be part of that committee, as would the other three councillors. So in effect, you'd have 7 individuals represented on that committee, which would give perhaps broader perspectives, but also would help us maintain the momentum that we've got on these in case we can't reach quorum for whatever reason. So that's really the premise behind this report. A number of municipalities across Ontario have taken a step back from having a planning advisory committee and transferring, as I say, those powers to the committee of adjustment, where, for clarification's sake, there's exactly the same opportunity for anybody, whether it's the proponent of a development, somebody who's objecting to a development, council themselves, and the two participants that we have here to have public representation in that process, to have their voice, to have their say, and so that wouldn't in effect change. So I could go over the report, but I feel like giving the kind of polls notes, if people are happy, we could I'll hand back to you.
Well, I'm happy to open it up to questions and comments if anybody has any.
This is a report that's made to council.
Yes. So this was after the challenges that we had previously getting quorum. This report was presented to the council as an initial concept idea, if you like, and the recommendation that we made, and I'm sure the council agreed with it too, was that we therefore bring this matter to the planning advisory committee as a matter of courtesy to have a conversation.
Yeah, so when council discussed it was basically twofold. One, we know that the level of service will not be affected. People wanting to do business with the township will not change. In fact, the meeting schedule will stay on pace to make sure that we're dealing with matters as they come in. And as I believe both of the members here today know, you know, a deal breaker for me was to ensure that the existing members of the committee were comfortable with it. That if members of the planning advisory committee were not okay to move over to the committee of adjustments, obviously that would be a loss for us, and I wasn't willing to go down that road. So I believe both members here today were satisfied to stay on and continue much of this work, and with a little bit of added responsibilities that come with the committee of adjustment. But unless anybody has any further.
I have a couple of questions actually. I know this one is going to be like, really, but is it legal? I know that you're going to have to pass a bylaw, and I know that there's examples of Bracebridge and Calendar doing this, but has anyone like really looked into it, if this is actually a legit way of handling our planning advisory decisions?
It is, yeah.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the committee of adjustment does have the powers to obviously consent applications. I was looking at kind of a bit more of the bylaw, what that's going to be today, just as a preemptive for if this does get passed. So yeah, they committee so kind of authority for minor variances, legal non-conforming uses as well. So potential is a slight expansion actually of kind of your roles. We haven't really seen many legal non-conforming use applications in the planning advisory context. Council may have done, but I haven't produced any reports in my time here anyway. But we do hope with the economic development strategy as and when that comes underway, that you're going to see vacant buildings spaces being repurposed for new uses. That might become an interesting aspect of planning for that community moving forward.
So how often does the community adjustment currently meet?
Not too long.
It will
Or
be.
even never something.
Probably more frequently now that we're gonna be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're gonna be driving that agenda more than the Committee of Adjustments had. I can't remember
Yeah, I believe
the.
it's going to be monthly at least, but I'm pretty confident we're going to be going monthly all the way up till the summer, at least, because even if there weren't consent applications, and there are some in the pipeline, we have the official plan review ongoing, and we receive that draft back. There'll be conversations around that too. So, although the Committee of Adjustment won't have the powers to authorize, council would still be the approval authority. All of the nuts and bolts and discussions and issues or concerns would be resolved at that Committee of Adjustment level, hopefully.
Yeah. Because of the personnel we have, really, we're taking this advisory committee and we're merging it with council. It's just on another name, really, because it will be basically the entire council.
Yeah, when we sit
Yeah.
with that hat on, we don't have the authority to bind the corporation the same as we do when we sit in an official council meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
but it's the same person.
Yep.
Right, so, like,
We need the whole for sure.
so really, it's gonna be the four of us. With the mayor that actually do have. I guess 3.5 years of experience plus the training, and then we have 4 members of, is it 3 or 4 of them?
With the extra 3 councillors.
3 extra 3.
Yeah.
And so what's gonna happen with them with regards to bringing them up to speed? Are they just gonna learn on the fly?
So we've had meetings. They actually were involved in the last meeting with Jill Richards to go over the official plan. We invited them to our meeting to ensure that they're trying to streamline the education purpose of that.
As Committee of Adjustment members or as council?
As council, they were invited as
As
guests,
council.
yeah, which they could, any council member could sit as a guest, just as anybody in the public meetings, but we did our best to ensure that they were included because we know that it's gonna be a topic of conversation that council is gonna have to deal with. We tried to save on consultation fees, by not having Jill Richards have to come and make the same presentation twice. So they're up to speed on that. We've had many sessions where we've actually talked about official plan at the early onset stages, kind of setting some of that overall direction and that we the umbrella conversation, setting the umbrella conversation for our consultants to go away, some of the things that we knew that we've heard from constituents and that has been logged even through staff before this council or these staff were in place. They were all discussed, priorities notionally set as to how we any pinch points that we saw in the official plan that we wanted to deal with. And then, yeah, so they have a cursory knowledge or they've had some time to review that official plan for sure.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the agenda package you receive for council, they also receive a full copy of the report
Right.
and with the contents. So even though they're not the ones involved directly in these discussions, I'm sure sometimes maybe they're watching online now. But they're still immersed, they're there in the background, but there's always in municipal council like this conversations flowing around kind of, just complaints from the community, whatever, strategic issues, but whatever the council's agendas are, right? We always have to balance all of these factors in. So
Did you have planning workshops?
Yes, early on, yeah, for sure we did, especially strategic planning. I was trying to remember. We did a strategic planning session, which really, because it was our cycle of coming into our official plan, we talked. There was a section of our strategic plan we talked about that and how that would necessarily, how we needed to ensure that the new official plan could speak to potential strategic direction for the township to ensure that it aligned, that we weren't hamstringing ourselves on one side or the other. We wanted to make sure that everything was kind of working together. Our strategic plan, it would be ill-advised for our strategic plan set out a direction over here and our official plan didn't support that or permit that to happen and vice versa. So we want to make sure that, so there's been lots of meetings and conversations about kind of that stuff, so.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, we're only looking at this primarily as this period to see out the rest of this council term, and then subject to a new council coming in. That's up to that new council to set
That
the
was actually one of my
direction for the whole.
next questions, is that, is this a permanent, because you state, the document states that you have to pass a bylaw in order for this to get transferred over, right? Actually, 2 bylaws. So are those bylaws coming with an expiry date, or are they?
Transfer, bylaw transfers, motion doesn't.
So, technically, no, it'll actually, I believe, be this term of council that will look at what committees will be for the next term of council, so that it's kind of ready to go for the next council to come in. In my opinion, it seems a little backwards to me, because as a new council coming in, they should be able to pick what committees they think would serve the community best, but, according to our CIO and the quick conversation I had with her, I believe it's gonna actually be discussed at this term of council. So the permanency of this move versus the creation of a planning advisory, a fresh planning advisory committee and the new term of council is up for discussion, but yeah. I think we're just trying to get through this next few months the smoothest way possible, and unfortunately, with the resignation, you know, I'm trying to make sure that voices are heard at the table appropriately, that you guys are going to continue to have an effective voice, and then add in the council members, just they have a less of a steep learning curve. So
Yeah. I think that's where my concern is, because, you know, as you stated, that council members are invited just like the public, and they have been, you know, following along and all that, but at the end of the day, Eric and I are the only non-on-field employees that have a say in, you know, these matters, the official plan. Well, for the record, I have to actually, you know, recuse myself from, you know, from further official plan talks, but so that leaves only Eric, so that's only one person from the public that has a voice. And so I don't know how comfortable I feel with the fact that basically council is gonna be deciding on the official plan without any input from the public.
yeah, I mean, I guess we can get into philosophical conversations about you know, as an elected representative, we're probably as close to the ground on hearing public feedback as any level of government is. The work of the planning advisory committee is important work to help inform council's decisions, for sure. And kind of do some of that nuts and bolts day-to-day grind work. So for sure, what would happen is, I mean, I think we're far enough in the process now that council, there's not a, I'm hoping we're at the final stages of our planning advisory, of our official plan. Obviously, our zoning bylaws, official zoning bylaw will be in the next phase of that. I don't even know if we're going to get to that in this term of council, to be honest. So
There's ambitions to do so, but we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
at least to get the official plan and get the foundations,
Right.
that would be a great start.
Is there any room for opening it up to at least one more member from the
Yeah.
public?
You can do one, because you'd have like an even number, sorry, so you need an odd number for decision making.
So 2,
yeah,
because realistically, you've lost, for the official plan review, you've lost two people. Myself, right?
Yep. In that, but not in
In
the
that.
consent stuff. So just to clarify, in terms
Yes.
of like you being on that, we'll schedule it so that's last on the agenda item, so you can still take part in all the conversations and then
Sure.
recuse yourself at that point.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that. I don't know that the public voice is lost because it's coming through a council. I mean, we're there to represent constituents. So that, I mean, that is our primary purpose. So while we appreciate the work of the planning advisory committee or any other committee, because it really is that grunt hands-on work, I don't think by any means you're representing the public any more than I am, and just because I also wear the council hat, I think we both probably have an equal say and get the same amount of feedback from the public and bring it to them to represent it there for sure.
If I can, I feel at this stage, given that it is so far advanced, the plan, that actually the whole process might be a bit smoother with that opportunity for collaboration between members of the pack and council, because council inevitably were the ones that say yes or no, right, about the policies. So if we were pulling in different directions, I haven't seen that yet, but if we were pulling in different directions, then if we only found that out at last minute, then we're going to adopt it in August, September, whatever that might be. It's better to get some of those tough conversations out of the way, right? And have that informed by some of the supplementary work they're doing right now, the evidence base that we're preparing, support the different policies.
So I asked at the start, how many meetings or how often do the committee of adjustments meet? And I got the impression that they don't really meet, right?
It's only when we have minor variances or
Which is really seldom, right?
yeah, so this
So-
will be a
This will
replacement.
increase
This.
the frequency of that.
Of that meeting, but
Yeah.
but most matters are planning advisory, so why not just have one of the members off, you know, the other committee to join us and fill the vacant seat. And leave this as is, so it's still planning advisory with additional.
Sure, tell me the upside of that. I'm just trying the rationale.
Well, the one upside is that we maintain the committee of adjustment for, as I said, stated, or as you guys stated, they don't really meet. Like how many times a year? Twice a year? Once a year?
But that's only because the remit of that committee has been quite narrow, so we're expanding the remit, so they'll meet it'll be the same regular monthly schedule, like exactly what we've got now. Once the official plans on bylaws review, which is gonna take us through the next
You know,
12-18 months.
we're already meeting, so I mean, why bring in, you know, 3 counselors? You know, and basically, what I'm saying is that there's optics of it is that the entire council is on the planning advisory committee reviewing the official plan. That's one thing that kind of makes me uncomfortable, and I wanted to be a part of this, and unfortunately, I made that decision and I had to step away, but so you're saying that basically the best option is to jump over to committee of adjustment, which don't meet and don't review planning items, and dissolve the planning advisory committee, even though that we do meet regularly and we do review the plan, the official plan, right? So you can't add one more person from that redundant.
We'd have to change the bylaw regardless, it's, yeah,
I don't know, there's a couple things here, like, you know, if we're reviewing the official plan, I mean, makes more sense to review it under the planning advisory committee, not committee adjustment.
yeah, I mean, the purpose is, I mean, the suggestion is this, to ensure that, again, the voices of the committee aren't lost in everything. I understand the planning and the official plan with the conflict. So even if we brought a member of the council, it hasn't changed to your point. I don't know that it's actually materially changed. I mean, now it's gonna be 3 elected representatives and 1 committee member,
On that,
which, you know, would be,
I think it's the unique circumstances where we're at,
Yeah.
because one member resigned and then you've had to.
That's right, yeah.
It's just, it really is, and it's short term, it's crunch time, let's get that project done. And the government says a couple of red tape, so a range of factors that led us to this point. I hope you'll believe me and anybody else watching that it was by no means a deliberate attempt for anyone to circumvent the.
Oh, no, of
process
course,
between us.
yeah, no, I received the call. I understand what's happening, but just doing my own due diligence, that's all.
yeah, listen, we could leave the planning advisory committee as is, because I mean, here we have quorum, we're doing our work. Again, it's gonna be 1 member of the committee that isn't an elected official.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And I do have one more point. Actually, we've already done the statutory public meeting for the official plan when the draft was first done. So we're not obliged to do any more on that, but we've decided we're going to do 1 more open house. So when this revised document comes back, if everybody's satisfied, there's going to be a whole opportunity for the public to be engaged in that then. So that would be the main forum through which we'll capture public feedback in regards to.
Okay, so the public will have a say prior to these bylaws being,
The whole township, yeah.
yeah, okay.
And we'll see what the participation is, because not.
We
People
have a
want-
meeting tonight, Ed, well, yeah.
More meeting for councillors. Learn more.
Yeah.
Bit more.
Again, this was never, the intent is never to try and have less voices around the table. It's unfortunate we find ourselves in this circumstance of facing, do we bring on a new member, like advertise, and then go through a process to select a member of the planning advisory committee, which council would do. And then,
Take a few months.
yeah,
to
bring
learn
that
the
up to
curve
speed.
and
I'm
all
not
that.
sure, yeah. I don't know that we would be able to move work forward as quickly as we would hope, or by the time that person's up to speed, it'd pretty much be Eric's voice. At least for the official plan, obviously when we're doing
I don't see it.
consents or anything, so,
We're back talking about lake capacity issues again.
yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, so. Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted in my head now because I don't want it to be perceived as though we are trying to circumvent democracy by any means, or have less voices around the table. This was really just a suggestion that was brought forward. Given the circumstances we find ourselves in, and try and find the smoothest way forward to be able to continue to progress the municipal business, which there's important things in front of us for sure.
And you'll be less vulnerable if somebody else quits.
Right.
I can see.
Well, you're the only one left if
Never know.
Like, what is the quorum for the park?
Is it three?
Still me, right?
50% plus one means.
Yeah, it would be three regardless.
Oh, yeah. Well, in this case, because it's three of you, wouldn't it just if two of you vote for it, then it's 51, 50%, right?
Yeah, no, he's a quorum to be able to even
Oh,
have a
well,
meeting.
sorry.
Yeah,
But that's a good point, so if you guys vote for it, then it's a done deal anyway, right?
Well, it's still good to have this conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
I understand.
Of course, I haven't made up my mind, I'm just reviewing.
so, yeah, and again, we brought it forward in light of. To be honest, it's not even a decision-making authority, but obviously we want to do it very carefully, wanting to ensure that. We have consent, hopefully unanimous consent of the planning advisory committee. And it's been my clear objective from the beginning of. If we have members of the planning advisory committee that don't want to shift over. Then quite frankly, I don't like that idea, because I do believe we'd be losing some good voices and great work in the township if you decided to step away, so I don't want to do that by any means. I would say we roll with the dice and we continue to hopefully be able to pull three people together in a meeting.
Yeah, no, I can give you my word that I'm not stepping away, if it goes through, I'm gonna follow through on my word. So that's not something to worry about, so.
Yeah. I want to make sure people are comfortable, like I don't want you to leave and feel as though somehow we've skirted democracy or we've done
No.
any of that, like if you have suggestions, like I'm open to it for sure.
Well, no, I think it makes it easier for the township, right, because you have numbers, so even if there are 2 people missing, 3 people missing, you guys can still make your decisions that night, right? So I get that, we are kind of a slipping by, numbers are dwindling, so.
Still gives a chance for discussion and that before they vote on it at council.
Mhm.
Council meetings, we'll spend 3/4 of an hour discussing.
No.
Planning that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the whole point of the committees is to truly flesh things out and have discussions, and that will continue, and then it actually is probably. The other side of this argument is, it would be a great opportunity if you have a concern with consent or anything that's happening, and or a concern with something to do with the official plan. it actually gives you an opportunity to voice your thoughts and opinions to the entire group that will be the deciders on it. So it's an opportunity to actually.
One way or the other. it goes.
Yeah.
That thing has changed.
Yeah. You just got the rest of us that you can now convince to your side of an argument, and then yeah,
It's the same.
yeah.
For an advisory committee, so.
And I can say from my own perspective, council, they all bring their own perspectives to bear on matters. I'm sure they'll continue to do that too, so.
Any other thoughts, questions? So the motion reads that the Planning Advisory Committee acknowledges receipt of the planning report presented to council March 24th, 2026, which pertains to a proposal to disband the Planning Advisory Committee and transfer its existing powers and responsibilities to a newly refreshed Committee of Adjustments, and that the matter now be returned to council for its final consideration. And further, the existing PAC members, Eric Foisey and Camille Roblinski, be considered for appointment to this new committee. Any other questions, comments?
Not a new committee. Still,
Yeah, to this committee, yeah, you're right.
unless you want to give it another word.
No, I really don't, I think, yeah. I guess honestly, I'm gonna look at the table, and even though this is not, it's ultimately council's decision, I would look at both of you and say, if either of you are truly uncomfortable with it, I, as the chair, would actually want to represent that and say, I too, we value the work that you guys bring in to this committee, and I don't want to devalue that by just ransacking or running over somebody's opinion. As I mentioned, I think to both of you individually, if either of you are uncomfortable, it's a non-starter for me, so.
And if I can,
Yeah.
one of the reasons that we did the two forums, I know it's more on the economic development side of that in November, was to actually, there's different ways to engage the public and create interest around policy and the direction of the township. And so I get it, it's a decision-making authority, but like there's other ways to engage with council and have your perspective, and anybody can reach out to council at any time with any issues they might have on proper specific matters. So that's not changing either.
Not that we get a lot of them. So. Community engagement is not a healthy community engagement
Doesn't,
is not
like it was in the past.
no, you don't
Way-
people
it
sitting in
changed
the
a
council
lot.
chamber, and it'd be great. We encourage it. We try and be as friendly as we can be when somebody shows up. Because we love the fact that if there's somebody in the audience, that's great. But sadly, yes, we're too boring.
Things that change.
Speak for it.
Yeah, okay, so I will just look at like Tim, like honestly, I think Eric is just gonna go with the flow here. I'm gonna look at you, and if you're not comfortable, then I'm gonna side with you. Like it's that was my undertaking from the beginning of this, and
No,
I stay with it. So
I'm good.
yeah,
I just wanted to make sure I understand what this looks like.
Planning Advisory Committee is working for the council, so it doesn't matter what.
Yeah.
How you,
and we're all working on behalf of constituents. Like that's the thing. Like we're all here. Quite frankly, come October, and we're all out of a job in October unless we get renewed later in October. So who knows what that looks like?
Yeah.
Except Simon, he's not out of a job. He gets to stay.
The wheels keep turning.
Yeah.
I'm retired, can I retire from retirement? No.
Okay, we'll look for a mover and a seconder. Second by Ken. You need me to read it again? No, all in favor? It's carried. Probably actually a great example of, because I really only vote in the matter of a tie. When you have such
You
a,
vote anyway.
I can vote anytime, but really the chair, most known for breaking ties. I feel bad. I wanted you to know that you had the balance of power there, but I felt bad. I didn't want to put all that in your shoulders, but it's a great example of when there's only three of us and I'm gonna tie. I wasn't gonna break my word to say that I'm, that I would not do this unless everybody was comfortable, and yet I feel bad because I put you in a position of,
No,
because there's only three of us sitting in a room, so, yeah,
well, it's all good.
yeah, okay,
I think it's good because you're more secure,
yeah.
because we're.
Yep.
Only three right now, so.
I actually look forward to the balance of council, hearing the conversations that happen and
Yeah.
back and engaging in it. I think it will actually be informing and enlightening, and I think it will actually help ensure that we're making even more well-informed decision at the council table, so it's good.
Well, they're forced to come to our meetings.
They are, absolutely. I'd like to say they're all watching right now, but I don't think that's I can't remember. I don't really watch the rec committee meetings, or I don't watch other meetings. So I would imagine they're all watching our planning advisory committee meeting.
And whether people voted for them or not, they were elected as representatives, so they are there to represent the people of the township anyway, so you can look at it from that lens too, but.
So, okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to. We received some correspondence, letter from the Honorable Robert Flack, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, regarding the Building Homes and Improving Transportation Infrastructure Act 2026.
Yeah,
You want to very briefly?
yeah, unless anybody's got any questions or want to get in conversation around this, I just thought this was a really interesting one. It was dated April the 1st, and so at first I did look at it twice and I wondered. It wasn't an April Fool's joke. It's it does propose more changes to the various acts, if you like, and as we've talked about in previous meetings, there has been kind of like this chopping away at different aspects. This is kind of bringing some of the issues back to the fore here. Particularly in regards to Planning Act, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is saying Schedule 7 of the bill proposes following amendments to the Planning Act that would create conditions necessary to support housing and community development. It again refers to standardized structure and a standardized set of land use designations for local official plans, i.e. local and single tier municipalities as we are. And this is another reason why, at least now you haven't passed the last motion. If there were to be more delay and procrastination in terms of getting the official plan done, before you know it, some of these acts could be adopted, which we could literally be back at the start again of the whole official plan process.
Yeah.
Designing new policies, standardized policies, or waiting for 12, 18 months for the province to produce regulations about what those policies would actually look like. So again, in terms of timeliness, it's important that we keep moving forward on that project to get something adopted. The other thing that I noticed was interesting in here was really just kind of like a ban on the use of the terms sustainable design and enhanced. I'm trying to find the particular sections where it says that, which we found interesting. I mean, sustainable design, there's different ways to, you know, buzzwords get used. Resilient is one right now, like kind of preparedness, like you hear lots of things around kind of how do you make communities more prepared for the future and the changes that we're seeing, right, globally, nationally even. The term enhanced, I don't know what removing that or banning officers such myself as using, I cannot ask for anything that's enhanced anymore. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I'll have to just find another word.
We have a good vocabulary. I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's definitely a time that will be seen as an evolution in planning in the province of Ontario for sure. They're change makers. History will say whether it's good or bad changes, but they are change makers for sure. So we will accept this letter if I have a mover and a seconder. Seconded by Eric, that the Planning Advisory Committee acknowledges receipt of correspondence provided by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing dated April 1st, 2026, which pertains to Bill 98, the Building Homes and Improving Transportation Infrastructure Act 2026. All in favor? It's carried. I don't believe we have any other business, which means we move to the adjournment. Mover and a seconder. By Cam, seconded by Eric, that this meeting be adjourned at 6:16 p.m. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you.